It is my grandson's 17th birthday, and the air in the dining room feels heavier than the candles on the cake. Balloons sag in the corners, the sweet smell of frosting mixes with the faint scent of old wood, and laughter ripples between relatives who haven't seen one another in months. Yet my seat at the far end of the table feels more like an island than a place of honor. Before me lies a small, square package, my gift. I wrapped it carefully in plain brown paper, tied it with a faded blue ribbon. An ordinary box, yes, but one that carries an extraordinary weight. When I slide it across the table, my grandson barely glances at it. His eyes roll with the kind of disdain only a teenager can perfect, sharp, dismissive, meant to sting. 3 years have passed since he last looked me in the eye with anything like warmth. Between us yawns the distance of silence, misunderstandings, and whispered judgments. His parents have done little to bridge that gap, and so this moment, the simple act of offering a gift, sits at the edge of betrayal. I watch his hand hover reluctant as though touching it might burn him. In that instant, I see not just a boy, but every absence between us, missed baseball games, unanswered letters, the long summers when he never visited. And worse, I sense what the others at the table expect, that my gift will be small, outdated, irrelevant. They don't know what rests inside the box. They don't know the secret folded within, written in the unmistakable handwriting of a man long gone. My father's handwriting, still steady, still bold, though he's been dead for 40 years. The laughter at the table softens into uneasy silence. Even the candles seem to flicker lower, as if aware of the stakes. My daughter leans in, whispering through tight lips that I should not embarrass the family with strange old things. Her words cut, but I stay still. I have seen enough birthdays, funerals, and anniversaries to recognize when silence speaks louder than protest. My grandson pushes the box aside without opening it, reaching instead for the glossy packages piled high from others. For a heartbeat, my chest tightens, not from age alone, though the doctor has warned me of my heart condition, but from the sting of being cast aside, as though the years I've lived and the legacy I hold mean nothing. The betrayal is subtle, almost invisible, but its blade cuts deep. I keep my eyes on that little box. I know what waits inside a folded letter that carries not only my father's words, but a promise I once swore to keep. A promise that could change everything my grandson believes about me, about this family, about himself. I whisper under my breath, more to myself than anyone else, one day you'll understand. And as the laughter resumes and the candles burn lower, I feel the weight of destiny pressing against the ribbon and paper. Because this gift is not just a gift, it is a key, a trace, a doorway into the past and the future. And that was only the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The laughter at the table swells again, but it no longer includes me. My grandson turns away, tearing into brighter boxes with silver ribbons and sleek logos, while mine sits untouched at the corner of his plate. I try to smile to hide the sting, but it feels like holding a cracked porcelain cup. The effort to keep it whole is harder than letting it shatter. I sip from my glass of water, noticing how the bubbles cling to the sides as if unwilling to rise. That's how I feel, anchored, heavy, unable to float to the surface of this family's joy. 3 years of distance have etched lines deeper into my face than age ever could. I raised my daughter with everything I had, and yet her son looks at me like I am an inconvenience, not kin. The relational gap stretches taut, humming like a string ready to snap. I recall another birthday long ago, his 7th. Back then, he ran into my arms, sticky fingers from cake, begging me to tell him one more story before bed. "Grandpa," he had said, his voice still carrying innocence, "you're my best friend. That memory feels like it belongs to another lifetime." Now his voice is louder, sharper. He unwraps a shiny new smartphone from his parents and grins with the careless delight of youth. Everyone claps, cameras flash, and my daughter beams. I sit silently, my package still waiting. No one notices, no one but me. The wooden box inside my wrapping paper is plain, carved with faint swirls that my own father etched by hand. It's the kind of craft few people appreciate anymore, when factory polish outshines human touch. But hidden beneath the lid rests the folded letter, yellowed but intact, carrying not only my father's handwriting, but his old military insignia pressed faintly in the corner. Ordinary to anyone else, extraordinary to me. I lean back, trying to slow the pounding in my chest. The doctor once told me the heart remembers grief longer than joy. And perhaps he was right. There's a saying I once heard from a fisherman friend: a boat forgets the calm seas, but never the storm. My heart feels the same. I wonder if my grandson will ever see beyond the gadgets and glitter to notice the storms we weathered for him to sit at this table so secure. I wonder if he'll ever understand that sometimes the plainest gift hides the deepest treasure. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The wooden box seems to glow beneath the dim chandelier, though perhaps it is only my imagination. I keep glancing at it, waiting, hoping my grandson's curiosity might stir. But instead, he leans back in his chair, laughing at a joke from one of his friends. His plate is crowded with wrapping paper, the glossy shine of expensive things. My plain parcel sits like an unwelcome guest. I run my hand along the edge of the tablecloth, tracing the embroidery my late wife stitched decades ago. She would have known what to say, how to soften the moment with a smile or a story. Without her, my words feel brittle, trapped behind my teeth. I want to tell my grandson that the box carries more than wood and paper, that it holds a history older than him, a history that could change the way he looks at me forever. The box itself is not large, no bigger than a loaf of bread, its corners worn smooth from years of handling. On the bottom, invisible to all but me, lies a tiny carved symbol, a star surrounded by a circle. My father's mark. He carved it into everything he wanted remembered. When I was a boy, he told me the star is for hope, the circle is for family. Never let one break without the other. For years I kept that carving alive in memory, even as the family itself began to fracture. A cough rattles in my chest, and my daughter shoots me a quick, annoyed glance, as though even my breathing disturbs the celebration. I lower my eyes. The sting of her indifference is sharper than my grandson's rolling eyes. A son may forget his father, but a daughter, forgetting her own father, there is no pain quite like it. I catch the faint whiff of candle wax melting sweet and smoky. It takes me back to my own 12th birthday, when my father handed me this very box for the first time. I remember the way his fingers lingered on mine, his voice low as he said, "Keep this safe. One day it won't just be yours." At the time, I thought it was only a toy chest. I never imagined it would become a vessel of promises. The box is ordinary enough to anyone else, yet it has followed me through wars, through losses, through the raising of a daughter and the burying of a wife. To give it away now feels like giving away a piece of my very breath. But that is what legacy is meant to be, something handed forward, not clutched backward. I press my hand flat against the table to still its tremor. My grandson finally glances at me briefly, then back at his phone. His look says everything. You're outdated. You're unnecessary. The silence between us grows heavier than the room itself. Silence has its own way of speaking. The sound of wrapping paper tearing fills the room again, but it doesn't drown out the memory tugging at me. I see my father's hands calloused, strong smelling faintly of tobacco, pressing the wooden box into mine all those years ago. One day, he said, his voice low and certain, "You'll understand why this must pass on." At 12, I didn't ask questions. At 72, I still don't have all the answers, but I know the box carries more than sentiment. The present moment pulls me back. My grandson sets aside another expensive gadget, thanking his parents, with half-hearted words, his eyes already shifting to the next gift. He does not look at me. That hurts more than his rolling eyes did. Once he used to hang on my every story, pirates on the river storms that nearly took our boat the summer I broke my arm climbing the old apple tree. He begged for them at bedtime, his little hand gripping mine until he fell asleep. Now his hands grip only glowing screens. I clear my throat softly. The room does not quiet. My daughter is chatting with an aunt about vacation plans. My son-in-law scrolls his phone under the table. The laughter is a wall I cannot climb. Still I try. There's something important in that box. My voice trembles, but no one turns their head. The box itself remains ordinary in sight. Plain wood, a faint polish, corners dulled from time. But in my mind, it is alive. I remember when my wife hid her wedding ring in its hollow during the war years, afraid of thieves. I remember when I placed my daughter's first drawing inside a lopsided house with 3 smiling figures. That house had no roof, but I kept it safe for decades. Objects matter less than the meanings we stitch into them. My grandson finally sighs, reaching for a forkful of cake. "Maybe later, Grandpa," he mutters, dismissive. His tone is casual, but it lands like a stone. The others don't notice, perhaps they don't want to. I swallow hard, forcing down the ache that rises in my throat. Outside the window, the wind presses against the glass. I notice the curtains shift, a soft whoosh that sounds almost like a whisper. It reminds me of an old folk saying from my village, "When the wind speaks indoors, it carries the voice of the forgotten." I wonder if my father is here now, urging me not to let the silence win. I sit straighter though the ache in my back protests. I will not beg my grandson to open it. The choice must be his. Still, a gnawing thought sharpens inside me. If he never opens it, the promise I was meant to keep dies with me. That fear cuts deeper than rejection. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The room once filled with cheerful chatter falls strangely quiet when my grandson sets his fork down. His fingers drum against the table, impatient, and though he avoids looking at me, everyone notices the box still sitting unopened beside his plate. The hush is almost accusatory, as if the small package has stolen the air from the room. I glance around. My daughter forces a smile, brittle as glass. My son-in-law clears his throat and mutters something about old things. My grandson shrugs, pretending indifference, but his shoulders are tight. Even the cousins stop mid-laughter, their eyes shifting between him and me. In families, silence often says what no one dares speak aloud. Tonight, it shouts. The birthday candles burn lower, dripping wax onto the cake in uneven rivers. One flame flickers violently, nearly going out before recovering. I can't help but see myself in that unsteady flame, still burning, but vulnerable. My heart gives a small jolt, the kind the doctor warned me about. Stress, he said, would come not from strangers, but from those closest. He was right. I fold my hands in my lap, feeling the cool metal of my wedding band. My wife would have spoken up by now. She had a way of diffusing tension, of wrapping hard truths in gentleness. Without her, every word I might say feels weighted, risky, too sharp. So I say nothing. The silence thickens, pressing down like humidity before a storm. Someone coughs. Someone else clears a throat. My grandson shifts in his chair, finally muttering, "It's just old Grandpa. I'll look at it later." His voice carries a hint of embarrassment, as though my gift is a burden he doesn't want displayed in front of friends. I feel a sting sharper than expected. A memory rises, my own 12th birthday, when I refused my father's old pocket knife, calling it useless. He said nothing then, too. But that night I found the knife on my pillow waiting. I carried it for years through hardship and hunger, until the blade dulled and the handle wore smooth. I never told him how much it saved me. And now, decades later, I've repeated the same cycle with my own grandson. The room exhales slowly, conversation trickling back, though quieter. Still, the unopened box sits at the center of everything. A small, silent storm. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. I watch as the cake is cut, slices passed around on paper plates, frosting smearing little hands. The laughter begins again, though it feels forced, brittle, as if everyone is relieved to move on from the box. But I cannot. My eyes stay locked on it. The blue ribbon still knotted the corners of the brown paper creased from my fingers. Inside lies the folded letter. Its ink faded but legible, the last words my father wrote before his death. I remember the night he handed it to me. It was winter, the windows frosted, the house lit only by a single lamp. His handwriting trembled slightly, but the words were bold instructions, confessions, promises. I was barely a man, yet he trusted me with it, telling me, "Keep this safe until you know it belongs to someone else." For decades, I wondered who that someone might be. Tonight, watching my grandson roll his eyes, I wonder if I've chosen correctly. I sip from my water again, noticing how the glass trembles in my hand. My heart beats unevenly, reminding me of the doctor's quiet warning, "Be mindful. Don't let stress anchor you." But how can I not when the very blood of my blood dismisses me as if I were a shadow? Across the table, my daughter catches my gaze. She leans closer and whispers, "Dad, maybe don't make this into a scene. He's young. He doesn't need that kind of stuff." Her eyes flick nervously toward the box, as though she already suspects it carries more than wood and ribbon. Her voice is laced with fear, not of me, but of what truths the box might reveal. My fingers twitch against my knee. I think of a detail few here would know. The paper inside carries not only words but a pressed flower, delicate and brown with age. A sprig of rosemary. My father once told me rosemary is for remembrance. I never asked whom he wanted me to remember. Perhaps tonight the answer will be forced into the open. The noise of forks scraping plates fills the silence. My grandson licks frosting from his fingers, ignoring the gift. But the box is patient. It has waited decades. It can wait a little longer. Yet the tension coils inside me, growing tighter with every passing minute. If he doesn't open it tonight, will he ever? Silence has its own way of speaking. The plates clatter as they're stacked, but my eyes don't leave the small wooden box. Its presence gnaws at me louder than the laughter trying to reclaim the room. My grandson leans back, scrolling through his phone, his thumb flicking faster than his heartbeat. He doesn't see how his casual dismissal cuts deeper than cruelty. To him, the gift is nothing but an old man's attempt to stay relevant. I know better. The folded paper inside carries my father's script, a mark that cannot not be forged. Each letter is pressed hard into the page, the ink darkened with the weight of his hand. On the bottom corner, he signed with a flourish only he used, 2 small lines under his name, a sailor's habit he never broke. I remember tracing that mark as a boy, whispering his name like a prayer. The handwriting is a personal trace proof of a life lived and a promise passed down. I've kept it hidden for decades, through moves, through hardship, through the slow erosion of respect in this very family. Now on this birthday, the weight of that trace feels heavier than ever. My grandson doesn't yet realize what he holds or refuses to hold. I glance at him, and for a moment our eyes almost meet, but he looks away dismissive, leaving me staring at the top of his head bent toward a glowing screen. A pang of anger flares in my chest, not just at him but at myself. Have I failed him? Have I failed my father? The room fills with casual talk again, but to me every word is muffled as if heard through water. I can hear only the faint rustle of the ribbon when a breeze from the open window brushes past it. That sound pulls me back to a memory the night before my wedding, when my father tucked the letter into the box and told me, "One day your child or their child will need this truth more than you ever will." I wonder now if my grandson will ever understand, or if the truth will stay locked in wood until it turns to dust. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. My daughter's voice cuts through the chatter, soft but sharp enough for me alone. "Dad, please, don't push him. You'll only embarrass yourself." Her words sting more than my grandson's rolling eyes. She doesn't realize that by silencing me, she's burying her father's legacy as well. Or maybe she does, and that frightens her more than anything. She leans closer, her perfume a mixture of jasmine and something synthetic, the kind of fragrance that lingers too long. "He's a teenager." She adds, her lips barely moving. "He doesn't need the weight of your stories." The word stories drips with dismissal, as though my entire life, my father's life, can be reduced to bedtime tales no one asks for anymore. I bite the inside of my cheek, tasting the copper of restraint. My grandson is laughing at a joke one of his friends told, oblivious to the storm brewing, inches from his untouched gift. My daughter straightens, pasting a smile on her face, and says louder, "Dad, let's just enjoy the evening, okay?" The others nod, relieved, eager to sweep tension back under the rug. But my gaze lingers on her, and for the first time I notice how her fingers tap nervously against her glass. She knows something. Perhaps she remembers the nights I sat alone in the study, the box open before me, rereading that letter by lamplight. Perhaps she suspects the truth, though she has never dared to ask. The candle nearest me sputters, throwing a small shadow across the box. I think of an obscure detail my father once shared. Sailors believed a candle that guttered suddenly meant a spirit was near unsettled. Tonight I can almost feel his presence at my shoulder, urging me not to yield. I shift in my chair, straightening my back though it aches. My voice rises just above the clatter of forks. Embarrassment isn't the worst thing that can happen to a family. The table stills for half a breath, then conversation rushes back louder as if to drown me out. Still, my daughter's eyes flash uncertain. She knows I won't stay silent forever. Silence has its own way of speaking. The sound of forks scraping against plates fades as my grandson finally sighs, pushing his phone aside. For the first time that evening, his hand drifts toward the small parcel by his plate. The room seems to lean with him, every cousin, every aunt, every uncle watching to see what he will do. Even my daughter's voice, poised to interrupt, falters into silence. His fingers brush the faded blue ribbon, tugging at the knot. It resists at first, stiff from age, but then gives way with a soft snap. The brown paper tears slowly, reluctantly, as though it too senses the weight of what it holds. I swallow hard, my heart pounding in my ears. He lifts the lid of the wooden box with an almost theatrical carelessness, as though humoring me. Inside lies the folded sheet of paper, yellowed by time, its edges curled. For a moment he doesn't touch it. His eyes narrow, a flicker of curiosity breaking through his mask of indifference. Around the table no one speaks. The silence presses down, thick as smoke. "Is this it?" he mutters, half to himself, half to me. The words are dismissive, but his fingers betray him. They linger over the paper, sensing something different. He lifts it at last, and the room shifts. The handwriting is visible even from where I sit, bold strokes that carry the gravity of another era. My daughter inhales sharply. She knows that script. She's seen me hold it too many nights when I thought no one was watching. My grandson frowns, tracing the letters with his eyes. His lips part as though he recognizes something he cannot name. The ordinary gift no longer looks ordinary. It has become a mirror reflecting shadows none of them expected to see tonight. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. My grandson smooths the paper across his lap, the creases unfolding with a faint crackle. His eyes scan the words at first lazily, then faster, as though the lines have hooked him despite himself. A hush spreads through the room. Even the youngest cousins grow quiet, sensing that something larger than a birthday is unraveling here. I know those sentences by heart. The letter begins with a date, August 14th, 1953, inked in my father's steady hand. Beneath it, his words spill across the page, memories of his time at sea, a confession of sacrifices he never dared to say aloud. And one line in particular that sears like fire every time I read it. What I leave behind is not only for my son, but for his son's son. My grandson reads that line aloud without realizing it, his voice breaking the silence like a bell. The words hang in the air, heavy, undeniable. A ripple passes around the table. My daughter stiffens, color draining from her cheeks. My son-in-law shifts uncomfortably, forcing a laugh that dies before it reaches his lips. What does this mean? My grandson asks, his voice sharper now, no longer mocking. He looks up at me for the first time all evening, eyes wide with suspicion, maybe even fear. The paper trembles slightly in his hands. I can almost hear my father's voice again, the way he explained how handwriting was a man's second fingerprint, unique, impossible to fake. Even experts in courts have leaned on that truth ink pressed by hand, bears weight no machine can mimic. And here it is, undeniable, staring back at a boy who moments earlier dismissed me as irrelevant. Keep reading, I murmur. My throat is dry, but the words escape anyway. He obeys, his eyes narrowing as he reaches the second paragraph. There, beneath the confessions, lies a name none of them expected. The room reacts instantly. Forks clatter, whispers, rise, glances dart from face to face. My daughter covers her mouth with one hand. My grandson grips the letter tighter, as though it might vanish if he lets go. The first shock has landed, but it is only the beginning. The name lingers in the air like smoke. My grandson's lips tremble as he reads it again, softer this time, almost as if testing whether it truly exists on the page. Around the table, no one dares to breathe too loudly. The letter has turned a cheerful birthday into something far more fragile, a theater where every eye strains for meaning. Whispers ripple through the relatives. One of my nephews leans toward another, muttering questions too low for me to catch. My daughter lowers her gaze, her fingers tightening around her glass until I fear it will shatter. My son-in-law, usually quick with dismissive jokes, clears his throat but says nothing. For once, he doesn't know how to spin this. My grandson stares at me, his eyes wide, demanding answers without words. In that gaze, I see the reflection of myself at his age, confused, angry, desperate for truths the adults wouldn't give me. A pang of guilt gnaws at me. Perhaps I waited too long to let this letter speak. The handwriting itself becomes the uninvited guest at the table. Each bold stroke carries my father's presence. Even those who never met him can feel the weight of his voice pressing through the ink. The letter has outlived him, outlived my wife, and now threatens to outlive the fragile peace of this family. I look around. Faces are unsettled, masks cracking. This is no longer about a boy's birthday. This is about a secret unearthed in front of witnesses who will carry whispers far beyond these walls. I hear a chair scrape back. One of the cousins excuses herself to the kitchen, though I know she only wants to send a text to spread what she's seen. Secrets in families never stay confined. They leak through cracks faster than water. My grandson folds the paper halfway, then opens it again, as though afraid to let it close. His hands shake, but his voice is firm when he says, "Grandpa, is this true?" The question slices through me. My mouth opens, but the words stall on my tongue. But I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. The air in the room feels like glass clear, but ready to shatter. My grandson's question hangs between us, his eyes burning into mine. I open my mouth, close it again. Where do I begin? The truth has waited decades to surface. Now it demands to be spoken with no warning, no preparation. I lean back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. Silence is not emptiness, it is weight, and tonight it presses down on every chest at this table. My heart stumbles against my ribs, uneven and strained, but I force myself to breathe slowly. My father once told me, when the storm arrives, stand still long enough to feel which way the wind leans. I stand still now, even seated. My mind drifts unbidden to the night I first read that letter alone. I had been 22, barely a man sitting in a dim kitchen with only a kerosene lamp for company. Outside, cicadas screamed in the dark. Inside, my father's words screamed louder confessions of choices made in secret, of debts and promises that reached far beyond his lifetime. I remember the smell of the lamp oil, the faint taste of iron in my mouth as my hands trembled. I swore then to protect the truth until I found the right moment. And here it is on my grandson's birthday, fate or cruelty. I look at him now, and I see more than his indifference. I see the boy who once clung to my hand at the county fair, too afraid to ride the Ferris wheel. I see the boy who cried when his dog died, hiding his tears in my coat sleeve. That boy is still inside him, even if hidden under bravado and screens. Maybe he is ready, or maybe he never will be. My daughter breaks the silence at last. "Dad," she says, her voice brittle. "This isn't the time." Her eyes plead with me, but her hands tremble. She knows there will never be a time good enough. She fears what the truth might unearth, because deep down, she has always suspected there was more to her story than I told her. The room feels smaller, as though the walls are leaning in. My grandson looks back at the letter, then at me. He is waiting. They are all waiting. I clear my throat, my voice low but steady. Yes, it's true. And as those words leave my mouth, the first real storm begins to gather. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. My grandson grips the letter tighter, his knuckles whitening. His voice cracks the silence like a whip. "Then why didn't you ever tell me? Why didn't you tell any of us?" The table stirs, relatives shifting in their seats. Eyes darting, whispers, barely restrained. My daughter's face hardens, but her lips remain sealed, as if even she craves the answer. I lower my gaze to the box, still resting open, its faint carvings catching the light. "Because some truths wait for the right ears," I say softly, "and because silence can protect as much as it can wound." He doesn't understand. I can see it in the furrow of his brow, the flush on his cheeks. To him, silence feels like betrayal. To me, it was a promise one made to a man long buried. My father believed that certain truths, if spoken too soon, could fracture a family beyond repair. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps I have only delayed the breaking. The candle nearest my grandson gutters, wax spilling down its side like tears. I remember my father teaching me a superstition from his youth. If a candle cries, it carries the sorrow of someone at the table. Looking at my grandson now, his jaw clenched, I wonder if it is his sorrow or mine. He presses again, louder this time. "What else are you hiding?" The words are not just a question. They are an accusation, sharp enough to slice open years of silence. His voice trembles at the edges, though, and beneath his anger, I hear something else, a child's need to know, to anchor himself in a truth that belongs to him. The others lean forward. Tension thick as rope. Even my son-in-law, so quick to mock, sits rigid, his eyes fixed on me. It is as though the letter has turned us all into prisoners bound together by words from the grave. I close my eyes briefly, feeling the throb of my heart echo in my temples. There is more in that box, more than just the letter. Another secret, smaller but no less potent, waits beneath the paper. My fingers twitch, wanting to reveal it, yet I hesitate. Too soon, and the storm may swallow us all. Silence has its own way of speaking. The silence breaks when my son-in-law leans forward, his chair screeching against the floor. His voice is low, but the edge is sharp enough to cut through the tension. "This is nonsense," he says. "Old letters, old handwriting. What does it matter now, Dad?" He forces the word out stiffly. "You're stirring things up that should stay buried." My daughter doesn't protest. She keeps her eyes fixed on the table, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass in nervous circles. That silence wounds me more than her husband's words. I meet his gaze steadily, though, inside my chest. My heart pounds like a drum. "You're afraid of what the truth means," I tell him. His jaw tightens. His lips flatten, but he doesn't deny it. He tries to laugh instead, a hollow sound that falls flat. "Everyone knows you like your stories," he says. "Maybe this one got a little too real for you." But my grandson isn't laughing. He's staring at me, then back at the letter, then at his mother. The confusion in his eyes is giving way to anger. "Mom," he says, his voice rising, "did you know about this?" Her lips part, but no sound comes. She shakes her head quickly, too quickly. Her denial is water on hot stone, evaporating before it convinces anyone. My grandson slams the letter onto the table. Plates rattle. "Somebody tell me the truth." The room quivers with the weight of the moment. Even the cousins, usually quick to gossip or snicker, are silent. It feels like the house itself is listening. I glance at the box again, knowing what lies beneath the letter. A second layer. A small, brass key hidden under the false bottom pressed there decades ago by my father's own hand. That key will open a door my son-in-law does not want opened. I fold my hands to keep them from trembling. The urge to reveal everything now claws at me, but I wait. Timing is everything. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The room holds its breath as my grandson glares at his mother, then at me. His fists clench against the table, and the letter trembles where it lies a silent witness. My son-in-law leans back, arms crossed, wearing the smug look of a man who believes he has control, but he doesn't know the box as I do. He doesn't know what else waits inside. Slowly, with hands steadier than I feel, I reach across the table and lift the paper away. Beneath it, revealed at last, is a tiny brass key. Its surface is dulled by years, but the teeth are still sharp. Gasps ripple around the table. My grandson leans forward, eyes wide, his earlier scorn forgotten. A key, he whispers, half in awe, half in suspicion. My daughter pales, her hand flying to her mouth. She knows this isn't just a trinket. Memories flicker in her eyes, nights when she caught me holding the box, fingers brushing against the hidden compartment, as though guarding something no one else could touch. I set the key gently on the tablecloth. The faint clink it makes is louder than thunder. This, I say, my voice low, but carrying belongs to something that has been waiting longer than any of you realize. My son-in-law scoffs, though his voice is thinner now, more theatrics. You really expect us to believe there's some grand mystery locked away somewhere? It's a birthday party, not a circus. But my grandson doesn't hear him. His gaze is fixed on me, on the key on the box that is suddenly transformed from an embarrassing relic into the center of his world. What does it open, he demands. His voice trembles with urgency, with something like hope. I hesitate, letting the silence answer first. The truth is dangerous. That key leads to a place none of them know exists, a place holding proof of everything my father wrote in that letter, a place I swore I would reveal only when the time was right. And now, staring into my grandson's eyes, I feel the moment pressing against me like a tide I can no longer resist. But I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. The brass key rests on the table like a spark waiting for flame. Every eye is on it, though no one dares touch it. My grandson finally breaks the silence, his voice rough with urgency. What door does it open? I study his face. For the first time tonight, his bravado has fallen away. He is no longer the boy rolling his eyes at my gift. He is a young man standing on the edge of something he cannot name. My father's words echo in my mind. The truth is not to be handed over lightly. It must be unlocked. The key, I begin, my voice slow, deliberate, belongs to a place none of you have seen. A place your great-grandfather kept hidden and that I have guarded ever since. I pause, letting their imaginations race ahead. It opens the storage room under the old cottage, the one everyone thought was empty. My daughter gasps. That cottage? We haven't been there in years. I thought it was falling apart. Her voice trembles, caught between disbelief and recognition. I nod. It may be crumbling on the outside, but what lies within has outlasted time. My son-in-law scoffs, though unease flickers in his eyes. An old shed full of junk. You expect us to believe there's anything worth knowing in there? Not junk, I correct him, my voice cutting sharper than I intended. Proof. The word hangs in the air, proof of what they don't ask aloud, but their faces reveal the question burning inside them. I look back at my grandson. He is still staring at the key, his fingers twitching as though itching to claim it. If you choose to open that door, I tell him, you will see for yourself. But once you see, you can never turn away. Outside, the wind rattles the window pane as though urging us onward. In my village, there is a saying. When the wind pushes, the ancestors are listening. Tonight, I feel my father's presence stronger than ever, pressing me to let the next generation carry the burden. My grandson looks at me, his voice steady, though his hands shake. Then I want to open it. And with those words, I know the storm has only begun. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The key glints beneath the chandelier, a small piece of metal holding the weight of generations. My grandson lifts it from the table with a hesitant hand, his fingers curling around it as though it might vanish. For a moment, I see the boy he once was, the child who clung to my arm during thunderstorms, trusting me to keep him safe. Now he holds something that could shatter the fragile balance of this family. His voice is quieter than before, almost reverent. So what's in there? What did you keep hidden all this time? I lean back, steadying my breath. My chest aches, but I ignore it. Documents, I say, ledgers, deeds, letters, Proof that the stories my father told me weren't just tales. He left behind more than words. He left behind something meant to secure our family's future. My daughter stiffens. Dad, if this is true, why didn't you tell us sooner? Her tone wavers between fear and accusation. Because truth can divide as much as it unites. I answer. Your father. I tap the folded letter. Believed timing was everything. He wanted the right heart to carry it forward. I wasn't always sure I was that heart, and I wasn't sure you were ready to hear it. My grandson stares at the key in his palm. The golden sheen reflects in his eyes, mingling with questions too big for him to voice. He whispers, so, it's real. I nod slowly. As real as the roof above us. That cottage isn't just rotting wood. It's the threshold to a truth your great-grandfather buried with his own hands. The room shifts uneasily. Relatives exchange glances, the cousins wide-eyed, the uncles whispering behind their hands. Secrets this large don't stay contained. They seep into every corner, into every look. My son-in-law slams his palm against the table. This is madness. You'll drag this family through the mud with your stories. Leave the past buried. His voice cracks on the last word, betraying the fear he thought he concealed. But my grandson doesn't flinch. He looks at me with a steadiness I haven't seen in years. I want to see it for myself. And in his eyes, I see the same fire my father carried when he pressed that box into my hands. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. My son-in-law, red-faced, pounds his fist again. You're filling his head with lies, he snaps. This is poison. But my grandson stays seated, clutching the brass key like an anchor in a storm. His eyes dart between the faces around him, then back to me. For the first time in years, I see the boy who once trusted me without question. Lies don't come with handwriting, he says quietly, lifting the letter. His voice carries more weight than his years. The relatives falter, their protests thinning into uneasy murmurs. He is right. The script on that page is unmistakably my father's. Bold strokes pressed deep into paper as though his hand knew it needed to survive decades. I take a slow breath, the ache in my chest heavy but steady. Secrets divide families. I say, my voice low, cutting through the noise. But silence destroys them. The room falls into an uneasy hush. My daughter lowers back into her chair, trembling eyes wet with something she refuses to let fall as tears. I wonder if she remembers the time she asked about her grandfather, and I deflected, always promising later. Later has finally arrived, and it terrifies her. My mind flickers to an obscure memory my father once shared. In old village lore, keys were buried with the dead so they could unlock their way to peace in the next life. I never thought much of it until now, watching my grandson grip that key as though unlocking it is the only way to breathe. Enough, my son-in-law growls, his voice breaking the moment. He points a trembling finger at me. If you drag him into this, you'll regret it. We all will. But my grandson doesn't release the key. His knuckles whiten, his jaw clenches. The division has already begun, lines drawn in silence, in blood and ink that refuses to fade. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The storm inside the house reaches its peak, but then the sound of the doorbell cuts through the chaos. 3 short chimes, firm, deliberate. The room stills. Everyone looks at one another, unsettled. At this hour, no one expects a visitor. My daughter rises, hesitates, then slowly moves toward the door. When it swings open, a man in a dark suit steps into the light. His presence is calm, but commanding, the kind that silences a crowd without raising his voice. In his hand is a slim leather folder, edges worn, papers peeking out. He nods politely, then introduces himself. I'm Mr. Harris. I worked with your grandfather's lawyer before he passed. The air thickens. The relatives exchange glances. Even my son-in-law pales. I grip the edge of the table, my heart pounding, not from surprise, but from recognition. I've seen this man once before, years ago, when he delivered a sealed envelope with my father's initials on it. I never expected him to return. I was instructed to come only when this letter, he gestures toward the one in my grandson's hands, was opened in front of the family. His words are measured, heavy with intent. Your grandfather knew this day would come. The silence is suffocating. My grandson clutches the letter tighter, his breath uneven. My daughter whispers, "What is this?" But Mr. Harris does not answer her. He lays the folder gently on the table right beside the brass key. My fingers twitch. I know what rests inside, more proof, more truths layered upon the ones already spilling into the open. For decades I've guarded one half of the secret while the other half has waited in the custody of strangers bound by law. Tonight the two halves have collided. Everything you've been told and everything you've doubted, Mr. Harris says, is in here. His voice does not rise yet, it cuts deeper than any shout. The room feels suddenly smaller, as though the walls themselves lean closer to hear. My grandson looks at me, then at the folder, then at the key in his palm. His lips part, but no words come. But I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. Mr. Harris places the leather folder flat on the table, his fingertips pressing it down as if anchoring it in place. The air in the room hums with unease. My grandson leans forward, eyes locked on it, while my daughter whispers a shaky, "Please not here." But there's no stopping what has already begun. With deliberate care, Harris slides out a stack of documents, each yellowed at the edges, some stamped with seals, long faded. He sets them one by one on the table, deeds, contracts, letters signed in the same bold hand as the one my grandson just read. The sight of that handwriting multiplied across so many pages steals the breath from the room. "These were placed in my keeping," Harris says evenly, with instructions that they be revealed when the family gathered and the heir had the courage to open his gift. His eyes flicker toward my grandson, then toward me. That moment is now. The room is frozen, but my son-in-law finds his voice sharp and strained. This is a trick. These can't mean anything. Yet his hand trembles where it grips the tablecloth. Harris ignores him. He pulls free one last envelope thicker than the rest, sealed with a wax imprint nearly cracked from time. He lays it in front of my grandson. "This is the addendum to the will," he says. It explains what the key unlocks and why it was hidden. My grandson stares at the envelope as though it glows. His breath quickens. His fingers twitch, but he hesitates to touch it. The silence is unbearable. Even the younger cousins lean forward, wide-eyed, their cake forgotten. I feel my chest tighten, not just from age, but from the weight of knowing that once this seal is broken, nothing in our lives will remain untouched. Families fracture over less. Yet my father's words return to me. What is hidden in darkness festers. What is revealed may wound, but it heals. My grandson finally sets the brass key beside the envelope as if the two belong together. His lips part. "Should I?" He begins looking at me. I nod slowly, though my heart pounds. The storm is about to break. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. My grandson's fingers hover over the envelope as though it might burn him. The wax seal, cracked and brittle with age, still bears the faint impression of a star within a circle, the same mark carved into the wooden box. His breath is uneven, but at last he presses down, snapping the seal. The sound echoes louder than it should, like a gunshot in the silence. He unfolds the pages inside. His lips move as he reads, though no words escape at first. Then, slowly, his voice takes form. Trembling but clear. "The property, and all assets tied to it, belong not to my children, but to my grandson." The words hang in the air like lightning, frozen in place. Every relative at the table shifts, some gasping, others whispering. My daughter's face drains of color. My son-in-law bolts upright, fury written across his features. "That's impossible," he spits. "He can't just skip over his own children." But Harris interrupts, calm and immovable. "The will was amended lawfully. It was witnessed, signed, and notarized. There is no question of its validity." He taps the document gently. "Your father intended this to be clear." My grandson lowers the pages slowly, his hands trembling. For the first time all evening, his eyes lock on mine with something raw and unguarded. "Grandpa," he whispers this was for me." I nod, though my throat tightens too much for words. My father's foresight, his unshakable belief that the family's legacy would skip a generation and land in this boy's hands, it has come to life in this room. The relatives murmur louder, the room splitting like a fault line. Some mutter that it's unfair, others that it's destiny. My son-in-law slams his fist again, but the sound no longer carries authority. The tide has shifted. I reach for my glass, but my hand shakes so badly that water spills across the table. My grandson pushes the cup toward me gently, his touch hesitant but real. For a heartbeat, I see the child who once trusted me completely. The truth has been laid bare. Yet in his eyes, I see something more dangerous than anger or joy. I see the weight of inheritance pressing down, heavy and unrelenting. But I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. The room fractures in an instant. Voices clash, accusations, protests, demands. My daughter rises her chair, scraping harshly against the floor. "This isn't fair," she cries, her voice trembling. "All these years I stood by you, cared for you, and now you leave everything to him, to a boy who barely knows you." Her words cut deeper than she intends. My chest aches, not only from her anger but from the sorrow braided into it. She does not see that the will was never mine to alter. It was my father's decision carved into law before I could even question it. My son-in-law, red-faced and wild-eyed, points across the table at me. "You've orchestrated this," he spits. "All of it. You poisoned your father against us, and now you're using that boy to shame us." His fury rattles the glasses, but Harris remains calm, hands folded neatly over the documents. My grandson grips the will tighter, his knuckles pale. "Stop," he says, his voice cracking but firm. "It's written. You can't change it." His words are simple, but they ring with authority no one expected. For the first time, the room tilts in his favor. Still, the fallout spreads. Cousins murmur about money, about inheritance, about who deserves what. One aunt sobs quietly, whispering that families should never be broken by paper. Another uncle mutters that secrets never bring peace. Their voices weave a net of unrest that threatens to strangle us all. I close my eyes for a moment, and a memory surfaces, my father telling me about a superstition from his village that when a key and a will are revealed together, a family must either rise as one or collapse forever. I never believed in curses, but tonight, with the walls quaking from anger, I wonder if he knew something I didn't. When I open my eyes, my grandson is still staring at me. His face is pale, but in his eyes I see something new, a dawning realization that inheritance is not just wealth, but weight. He doesn't look triumphant. He looks burdened. The family is tearing at the seams, each word pulling threads looser. And yet, in the quiet between the shouts, I feel a fragile thread connecting only me and him. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The shouting dulls into a low hum like the aftermath of a storm. My relatives retreat into corners of the room, whispering fiercely among themselves, their voices thick with resentment. My daughter sits with her head in her hands, shoulders trembling. My son-in-law paces near the window, muttering curses under his breath, too afraid to say them loud. But at the center of it all, my grandson sits quietly with the documents spread before him. The key rests in his palm, the brass catching the dim glow of the chandelier. His lips press together, uncertain, but his eyes are steady when they lift to meet mine. For the first time all night, he looks at me not with irritation, not with suspicion, but with something softer. Recognition. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. That silent gaze tells me what words cannot. He understands, at least in part, that the gift was never meant to humiliate him, but to guide him. The boy who once rolled his eyes at me now studies me as though seeing an entirely different man. The silence between us is heavy but not hostile. It is the kind of silence that allows truth to settle without breaking. My chest eases for the first time that evening. I think of my father's line, "The star is for hope, the circle is for family." Tonight, I see both in my grandson's eyes. Around us, the family remains fractured, their voices like distant thunder. But between us, there is only a fragile, quiet understanding. A bridge, thin but real. And in that silence, I realize something I had almost forgotten. Sometimes the greatest inheritance is not land or wealth, but the look in your grandson's eyes when he finally sees you. But I soon realized that wasn't the end of it. The voices in the house fade like echoes after thunder. Relatives leave in small groups, some shaking their heads, others avoiding my eyes entirely. My daughter lingers by the door, her face pale and unreadable, before she too disappears into the night. Only my grandson stays behind the wooden box, and papers still before him, the brass key turning slowly in his hand. The room is quiet now, the candles melted low, their flames soft and trembling. I lean back in my chair, exhausted but strangely lighter, as though a burden I carried for decades has finally shifted. My grandson looks at me not as a boy, rolling his eyes, but as a young man who has glimpsed the weight of legacy. His lips don't form words, but his silence says enough. I think of my father, his handwriting pressed into paper, his steady hand carving the star and circle, his voice urging me to guard the truth until the right moment. Tonight I finally kept that promise. It did not come without cost. My family is fractured. Anger and betrayal may linger for years. Yet in my grandson's eyes I see the faint beginning of something my father hoped for: continuity. Outside, the wind is settled. A soft breeze brushes the curtains, carrying with it the faint scent of night-blooming jasmine. It reminds me of the evenings when I walked my daughter to bed, when the family was still whole, when silence was filled with peace rather than fear. Time has changed us perhaps too harshly, but tonight proves that not everything is lost. I rest my hand on the box one last time. It feels lighter now, no longer mine to guard. "Take care of it," I whisper. My grandson nods, the key glinting in his fist. A promise passes between us, unspoken but binding. In families, betrayal can scar, secrets can divide, but truth, even when it wounds, can also heal. I see that now. My father's legacy does not end with me. It continues, fragile but alive, in the hands of the boy who finally opened the gift. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched you, please subscribe and continue with the next story in the playlist.